Welcome to the online workshop series presentation on presentation skills. This is the second time that we've given this presentation, and we're really excited about it and hope to get some good feedback from you today. My name is Jonathan Strang, and I just wanted to introduce myself a little bit. I have my PhD from SUNY Buffalo in Ancient History and Archaeology, and I'm currently completing my Master's in Library and Information Studies here at UBC. And I'm one of the facilitators and instructional designers on this online workshop series. So we do have a number of learning outcomes that we want to go through today. What you're going to get out of this presentation is a deeper understanding of presentation skills. And we're also going to look at a core set of values about designing good presentations. And we're also going to try and address some strategies for giving more effective presentations. So I'm actually going to be asking you questions throughout today, hopefully trying to get at what you think of as a good presentation, and also trying to address some of the bad presentations that you've seen. Madhav says that he can't download the handout. Why don't I try just pushing the link one more time? And Madhav, if you continue to have a problem downloading the handout, I can send you an email with the handout after the presentation. You don't need the handout to participate in the presentation. They're designed as two separate things, but thank you for letting me know. All right. So I want to poll you a little bit about your experience giving presentations. So I want you to choose one of these categories. Choose the statement that best describes you. I memorize my presentations word for word. I can't make eye contact with my audience and I get really nervous. I give good presentations, but I always forget to say something important. I don't know how to communicate my information effectively. And I try to present a lot of information, but my audience doesn't seem to retain it all. So click on the statement that best describes you, and we'll just see what background area we have in the classroom. Okay, I see 6 responses so far. You can only choose one, so choose the one that best describes you. All right, I see 13 responses. I'll just wait another second. And okay, we'll just get to see what people are thinking in this. All right. So we do have a pretty broad spectrum of skills and experiences in this classroom, but possibly the biggest concern is that people really can't make eye contact with their audience and they get nervous. And that's something that we really address by being well prepared for the classroom, but also by having good visual aids. And I'm hoping that today's workshop will really convey the importance of good visual aids. A lot of people feel that they give good presentations, but they forget to say something important. And I know that I myself used to fall in that category, but I have to say that I really have turned around that if you don't say something important, it's not always the end of the world. It leaves an opportunity for discussion, and the important thing is that you did get a lot of messages across in your other statements. And a couple of people, don't feel that they are communicating their information effectively, and that's typically something that we're really going to address today. And we have people that memorize their presentations word for word, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that either. All right, I just had another in the classroom, so I'm going to push the handout again. If you have a problem downloading the handout, then I'll try and circulate it after the presentation. But hopefully able to download this. All right. So rules about presentation. Well, I'll give you 3 rules that I can think of. The first rule about giving a good presentation is that there aren't any rules for how a presentation should be made. Basically, anything goes in the presentation, and it's really about the needs of your presentation that dictate the format. The second rule about giving a good presentation is that there aren't any rules for how a presentation should look. So even the presentation that I'm giving today, that isn't necessarily how your presentation has to look. But there are lessons that you can take away from each presentation. The third rule is that anyone who tries to tell you there are rules making a good presentation probably just made them up. And that's the case today. I just made up those 3 rules. But again, what I'm trying to say is that there are good practices that we can follow. And we just shouldn't get so caught up in trying to follow rules that we lose sight of what will make our presentation better and more effective. Of course, it may really help us to look at a short history of presentations. After all, my background is in ancient history, so it's something I'm very sensitive about. Until very recently, and by very recently I mean the 20th century, all presentations could really be classified as speeches. And you know what a speech is. It's what politicians give. It's what generals give to inspire their armies. It's what CEOs give to their shareholders to, inspire them about their leadership, about the company that they're representing. And speeches are very carefully crafted to convince an audience about some important point and to persuade them to the point of view of the person giving the speech. And it's that art of persuasion that we're really going to talk about in greater depth, because the art of giving a good speech has really remained consistent since the invention of democracy in ancient Greece. And they called the art of speech making rhetoric. And it was an entire course of study, much like we major in biology or engineering. And there are 3 main skills that the ancients tried to instruct their students in, and those were ethos, logos, and pathos. And I'm going to go through these 3 points, so don't worry if you don't know how they're spelled. I'm not sure if someone's clicking on the talk button, but I do recommend that if you have something to say, try just using the chat box in the bottom left. I'm getting a little bit of feedback, so I'm not sure if anyone's practicing with the talk button. So ethos, logos, and pathos, these were the 3 principles of persuasion that were combined by ancient orators to tell compelling stories. And in an ancient speech, the most compelling speaker would convince the audience to their point of view. Muhammad says he lost the handout. What do you mean you lost the handout? It didn't properly, or? I can send the link once more, and there you go. Otherwise, I'll try and push the handout at the end of the presentation, but you don't need the handout to follow the presentation today. So getting back to rhetoric, rhetoric is really about giving the most compelling speech possible, and that was really how people made a successful speech. And the fact that it really just took convincing your audience may seem incredulous to us. We're a very fact-driven society. We think that things should be, people should be held accountable for the things that they say. But it's only very recently that we were able to do this. Before the invention of the internet, it was opinion that ruled the day, not fact. And it still remains important to sway opinion to our side when we're giving a presentation. All right, I'm hearing feedback again. If someone's clicking on the talk button, I recommend that you don't click on the talk button during the presentation, just so that I'm having one voice. If you have something to say, try using the chat box in the bottom. I know that we're all new to this Wimba classroom. We like exploring the different aspects, but that's just something that'll help us in today's presentation. All right, thank you very much. So I said I was going to go through those 3 points, ethos, logos, and pathos. And ethos is perhaps best described as character appeal. So what you have to think about there, the key question that we're thinking about is, why is the presenter credible? Why is the presenter credible? Think about the start of any presentation. Somewhere in those first few slides, undoubtedly, there was a list of credentials. So-and-so PhD or director of X or so. Now, this can be really important in a presentation that has multiple sides or points of view. Why should you believe one side more than any other? Most often, it really comes down to how credible they are. And sometimes ethos in a presentation can take on a really negative cast. When you make an attack against an opponent and you deconstruct their credentials, that's not something that tends to happen a lot in an academic talk, but it does happen, and it's part of the ethos characteristic. Logos is possibly the characteristic that is really driving a lot of our presentations here at university. Logos is an appeal based on logic or reason. This is the fundamental principle of most scholarly presentations. A presentation without facts is less compelling to the audience. After all, why should they believe anything you say unless there are concrete reasons? You can't just stand up there and say, I'm an expert in the field, believe me. You really want to have a logic-driven presentation. And a logic-driven presentation focuses on delivering information. It's still up to the presenter to show how that information is relevant to the arguments being made. Orators work hard to ensure that their interpretation of facts remain the most persuasive. And that's a key aspect of logos in a presentation. So it's not just the facts themselves, it's how you present them. The final pillar of the rhetorical arts is pathos. And pathos is an emotional appeal of the speaker. Pathos is really a hidden influencer in the presentation. If you think about slides and the content that you see on slides in a presentation, what you tend to see are logos, you see facts, and you also see ethos a lot, credentials, but you don't see pathos. And that's really sad because it's actually one of the most influential things in a presentation. And it really comes heavily in the art of delivery, the choice of words used by a presenter. Words really help excite an audience or help them relate to your presentation, and that is what pathos is. And most academic presenters, in my opinion, really shirk the responsibility to pathos in a presentation. They over-rely on their credentials and their facts to carry the day. And I think this is really why we see a lot of dry and boring presentations. So you really need to try to seize on pathos to create a tie in your presentation between the visual aids that you're using and your words. Think about a speech that's given by a politician at a war memorial. That sight really excites the audience with emotional ideas. And it's also how advertisers work to convince us that their products are better than their competitors, when in fact they may be exactly the same. Advertisements combine images with their products to influence us. So try and how you can package your visual aids in your presentation to impact your audience and to give them a real visual impact as well. So ethos, logos, and hi, Karen. Yeah, I'm still here. Can you hear me? I'm not sure if we're having any technical difficulties. If you can't hear me, log off and do the wizard again. Okay, Karen says she can hear me now. All right, we're good to keep going. For over 2,000 years, people just depended on mixtures of ethos, logos, and pathos to carry the day. And that really changed over the course of the 20th century. And yeah, here I have a picture of a woman sort of caught like a deer in headlights, and that's the slide projector. Because the slide projector really changed how people gave presentations. They could suddenly develop more pathos and show more visual aids. And previously to that, you really had to depend on the setting or your words to carry the day. And suddenly we had a lot more visual images. But that's not where it stopped. Suddenly we had a digital revolution, and we were able to represent our computers, our facts, basically everything right on the screen itself. And as you can see here in the slide, people really took a lot of advantage of this. Logos suddenly was all over our slides because people could put up every single fact, every single word, where previously we just had images. Now people were presenting their talks themselves. And this was really led to an explosion in bad talks. And I will explain why this is the case with two slides. The gentle hill. The gentle hill is a metaphor for the anatomy of how a speech is given, because a speech is at its heart a story. It has an introduction, a body, and conclusion. And you slowly build through the introduction and climb up to the body of a presentation, and you listen to it all the way through, and it flows, just like a gentle walk up a hill and down the other side to a satisfying conclusion. So that's how a presentation should be. That's how presentations should be, and that's how speeches are. They have a real flow and a gentle progression to themselves. Unfortunately, what's really come about over time is that we have a staccato heart to our presentation. Our presentations really excite ourselves, and they look a lot like a heart monitor. And what I mean by this is that every time we get to a new slide, we're suddenly flooded with new information, particularly if there's a lot of bullet points or a lot of new ideas. So suddenly, instead of having a flow to our presentation, every single slide in a presentation has a flow of its own. It has an introduction, it has a body, it has a conclusion, and then we move on. It's fatiguing. It's a lot of information to come, and there's a real breakup between slides now. Every time the slide changes, our heart excites. We have to absorb new information. And if there's a lot of text on a slide, well, that poses a new problem. Bullets are dangerous. Bullets are dangerous. And if there's one thing that I really want you to take away today, is not that you can't use bullet points on a slide. It's that people can't absorb the bullet points on your slide. So you really have to be more parsimonious about how you use bullet points. Because think about how many individual points can you do in a presentation. Is it 5? Is it 10? Well, bullet points are a real emphasis on a fact. There is nothing to discuss about a bullet point. It is a fact. It's an object of information that you want your audience to accept. So do those objects of information on your slide, are they complementing what you say, or are they what you're saying? If they're complementing what you're saying, then they're good because they're providing the necessary information for people to understand you. But if they are what you're saying, then possibly you have too much information on your slide. I really want you to think of bullet points as actual bullets. How many bullets do you need to impress your audience? You can fire a couple of warning shots off the bow, and your audience, you'll have their attention. Or you could try actually shooting massive rounds of bullets into your audience. Chances are they're going to remember both situations. They'll remember those couple of shots off the bow, and it'll get their attention. or they'll run kicking and screaming from the hail of bullets that you've unrighteously rained down upon them. They won't expect anything from that hail of bullets. They'll just be dodging and running and trying just to stay above water. What we really need to get back to doing is focusing on the delivery of our presentation. And that means thinking about multiple avenues of delivering content. That means not just presenting tons and tons of information, but thinking about how we can better convey the information that's important to our audience. So this is the part of the presentation where I really need, well, not need, but want to hear back from you. And again, I'd like you to just use the chat box in the bottom. And I'll just remind you that since there's quite a number of you today, if you see more than 4 or 5 questions at once, just pause and wait to ask your question so that I can get a chance to address them all. But what are some of the ways that we can focus on delivering a better message? And I also want you to think about what are some of the most compelling presentations that you've been to, and what did they do differently? So think about really good presentations that you've been to. What kind of characteristics do they have? What did you take away from? Because I know that you've been to good presentations, and then the flip side of this is you may want to think about what are some of the worst presentations you've been to, and what did they do wrong? So use the chat box in the bottom to share your ideas. More enthusiastic and confident presenters. Nancy, Nancy, I think you're still privately messaging me, but you're saying that good presentations are usually engaging the public. And Sarah says good presentations is where the presenter interacts with the audience. Can you think of how you enjoy it when the presenter really interacts with the audience? Because I think that's a really good point. There are lots of different ways that we can interact with the audience by asking questions. That's what I'm doing right now. So that's one form of interacting. Krasmus says, I like presentations where conclusions or important info is presented at the start, and they take a circular route to get back to how the conclusions are reached. That's actually what's called ring narrative, when you start off with a story and then you take a journey about getting back there. Madhav says, knowing his subject well, and I definitely think that gets back to confidence. And Sijia says, the bad one is that I get a lot of information and could not connect them into an integrated idea. Mazir says, I always fall asleep when I listen to people presenting. Well, do you listen to sleep when everyone is presenting, or just people who are being dull? Interjecting some humor helps, says Karen. Wow, you guys are coming up with lots of good characteristics. So the important thing is that you know that when you're hearing a good presentation, and you know when you're hearing a bad presentation. So one of the things I want you to start doing is to think when you're in a presentation, I want you to actually have a separate route in your mind where you just try and consider what is really bad about this presentation, and do I do that? How can I not do that? Try and actually take away from each presentation what you like and what you don't like, because that's going to help you find your own personal style. Nancy says scientific presentations are usually very dull. And I think that that's the case usually when it's a very data-driven presentation. But I've been to some really exciting science talks, and usually what they have in common is that they really are focusing on delivery more than trying to represent their data. And that's another important characteristic of a presentation, is that a presentation isn't the best way of conveying it. That's why we write papers. A presentation is a great way of conveying your conclusions and how you got there. Ji Young says, start with something that the audience is familiar with and then build a story upon it. That's another good point. So building from known to unknown. Wow, so you guys have some great ideas. So why don't we actually move on to actually thinking about some of the things that we need to consider when we're going to construct a presentation. And I think the primary thing that we need to think about when we're giving a presentation is that we're actually the expert. We may be giving this presentation to a professor. We may be giving a presentation to another board of recognized experts. That doesn't lessen the fact that we've lived with this topic for weeks or months, or in some cases even years, developing our own personal expertise. So you need to make sure that you accept that you're actually the expert. And then you need to think about the right mixture of rhetorical skills, all right? When we get back to that ethos, that logos, and pathos, you need to make a balanced presentation where you tell people why you're an expert. You present to them your mammoth, voluminous handling of the information, and then you also make an emotional appeal to them based on why you're excited. Why did you choose this presentation topic in the first place? Because it excited you, because it was more interesting than the other one. You know, chances are that your audience will really appreciate why you chose your topic, and you can really convey that in your presentation. You need to have a clear understanding of who your audience is. Are they a group of experts in your field? Are they your colleagues who may have only some understanding about it? They may understand your subject area, but they may not know your topic very well. Are they students looking for you to introduce them to a subject? This changes the purpose of your presentation, and it alters the way that you need to craft your message. So when you're thinking about your audience, I think that there are some real questions that you need to ask. What do they know? What do they want to know? What do they need to know? And why should they care? And all of those appeal to different aspects, again, of ethos, logos, and pathos. So you need to really craft your message so that it specifically is targeting your audience, because you don't want to go in to a first-year student population and start spouting off jargon that's very specific to your field. It will overwhelm them. You need to warm them up to the specific terms of your field, the dialogue. But if you're presenting to a bunch of subject experts, you can use that shorthand because that's what they expect and that's what they actually want. And then you can focus on crafting other messages that are specific to them. So really study your audience. It's not one message reaches everyone. It's actually a multiplicity of messages that you can deliver from the same information. I can't stress how important it is to really try to write out an outline of your presentation. A lot of people these days, when they're giving a presentation, will just fire up PowerPoint and start typing their talking points right into your slides. And there are a lot of reasons you don't want to do this. You don't want to do this because you may be missing out some important linkages or how things are going to relate in your presentation. There's a temptation just to write your entire presentation in PowerPoint, and then you're just going to read off your slides. And there are other reasons. I mean, it means that you're not thinking about how you can make your content compelling because you haven't thought about it first. So you really need to write out your presentation and consider what your talking points are and how you're going to make your content compelling before you even start to craft your visuals. Another reason for doing this is that you really want to think about the stories that are going to emphasize your message. Because if you were just saying the facts, well, let's look at just the facts. All right, let's consider a cup of coffee. And I picked a cup of coffee because it's a very finite thing. There are only so many steps to making the perfect cup of coffee. I'm also a coffee addict, but that's something personal. So if I were to just type into PowerPoint and I'm designing my presentation in PowerPoint, my slide would probably look something like this. To brew the perfect cup, we need to consider cleanliness, because coffee leaves a sediment of oils and carbon on the surfaces of your equipment. If you let these build up, they can affect the taste of your coffee, and they can make it bitter. You want to always use the freshest beans possible. Lots of coffee vendors are dealing in bulk, and your beans may have been sitting around for months longer than you've considered. Don't compound this problem by buying your coffee too far in advance and letting it sit in your storage for even longer. You need to consider the proper grind for your coffee equipment. A medium grind makes sense for manual drip or French press coffee makers, which is probably what most of you have at home. But if you're using an espresso maker, you'll want to get a very fine grind. Choosing the wrong grind for your coffee equipment can lead to a weak or excessive sediment in your coffee. Measure. Science tells us that one 6-ounce cup needs 2 tablespoons of coffee beans. Most people put too little coffee to the amount of water and end up missing out on the complexity of the flavor. All right, now there's a real problem with what just happened because you all just read all of the information on that slide and then you listened to me give it. And that actually put you in a position of actually choosing between listening to me or reading the slides or doing both poorly. And whichever situation, you may have absorbed that information poorly, or you may actually just have gotten bored, for which I severely apologize if that was the case. We need to think about things as a story. We need to think about things as a story. Now, and it doesn't have to even be the main story that you're trying to get across. It could be a story that you have injected into your presentation to kind of be a running meme, much like Crasher Squirrel. Some of you may be familiar with this squirrel. He jumped in front of a couple of tourists at Banff, and he became quite the internet sensation, showing up everywhere, including the moonwalk. So you can, if you don't have a story that you can tell, try making a story from the content that you have. So we're going to reconsider that coffee cup now, but we're going to do it in a different way. We're actually going to try and split the content up so that it becomes more of a story where we're listening to it in parts and we're absorbing it in parts. So when you're brewing the perfect coffee cup, make sure that your equipment is clean, because coffee can leave an oily residue or carbon on your equipment that can lead to an excessively bitter taste. Your coffee should taste like a fresh cup, not memories of yesterday's bad cup. Always get the freshest beans possible. A fresh grind can make a world of difference. Don't be a squirrel and stockpile too much coffee. Remember, you don't know how long that coffee sat around in the store before you bought it. So try going directly to the source. Go to a coffee roaster. Get the best beans. Your coffee equipment has a preferred grind. Read the instructions to see if you need a medium or fine ground. Espresso machines tend to like it finer, but your typical filter or French press is better off with a medium grind. And if you want the best of something, you need to appeal to science. Coffee specialists tell us that the best portions are 2 tablespoons of beans to one 6-ounce cup. If you aren't getting that much coffee, you're missing out on all the flavor. Get a spoon out and taste the difference today. So the difference there is the content was spread out over a number of slides, and you were really forced to focus on the visual. You were forced to listen to what I was saying, and it became, well, not the most exciting story. At least it progressed like a story. There were steps. Things led to each other. Instead of all the information being on one slide and competing with me for your attention, you were able to listen to what I was saying while having images complement. And it really comes down to thinking about your presentation like a ship, like a memory ship. And this is a metaphor. Your presentation is an encapsulated point in time. And it's useful to think of it as a voyage on a ship. For the course of your talk, people are going to get on board your ship, tour whatever sites and information that you show them, and from time to time, if maybe it's a cruise ship, maybe they're going to disembark at locations of your choosing. How are they best going to remember your presentation? Well, there are really two tactics that people take, and one of them is the bullet island approach. That's where you lay out the entire itinerary that you're going to take, and every single point is listed on your slides. But is that really the best way for people to take away information? You don't want people looking at the roadmap on a cruise. If people are constantly looking at the maps, they're never looking up and experiencing what they paid for. You want them remembering details. So think about how you're going to convey the facts and try to use supportive images to tell a story. Because what this will do is make a memory. Instead of all those bullet islands, instead of looking at the how you get to a bunch of information, what you want people to be taking away is the memory of a fact. You want to remember certain points. So by showing them what you want them to take away, that really helps them make a memory instead of thinking about the bullet points that got them there. So you need to consider what's going to help your audience remember better. Is it the photo memory or the bullet map? And there may be circumstances. There may be circumstances where it is the bullet map that is really going to help them. But that is something that you have to consider with your individual presentation style. All right, so it's the part where I have questions for you again, and you had such a good conversation last time. I'm looking forward to this again. So what I want you to consider is, what is the point of a good presentation? Is it to convey information that makes sense? Is it to make the audience remember it by delivering it in an interesting fashion? And what are your thoughts on bullet points? Are they completely unnecessary? When would you use them? So I'm particularly interested in the bullet point approach because I may harp against bullet points, but I actually use them quite a bit online when I'm discussing things, because one of the differences about giving a presentation in a room like Wimba here is that sometimes I need to convey more information to you because you can't see my face or gestures, and I can't circulate information as effectively in an online classroom. So I actually do make more use of bullet points on here, but since today is a special case, we're focusing on being very visual. So what are your thoughts about bullet points? Yay or nay? Nancy says, I'm with you on the bullet map approach. However, when you present data or clinical findings, yeah, that's a really good point. Okay, I'm just going to ask people to pause on the discussion just for a second so I can address the points that have already been made. You guys are fast typers. Um, yeah, sometimes you are going to be presenting data or clinical findings, and I think when you're doing something like that, try to do it in a visual way by putting a pie chart or putting up a single chart and talking to it. A chart is, after all, exactly the same as a photo, and it will just still convey a lot of information to people. So instead of maybe putting up all the sorry, there was a sentence there. So when you're presenting data, try to think of it as visualization. And when you're doing clinical findings, instead of putting them all on one slide, try and pace them out again. Deliver them in dribs and drabs, because after all, people can review your presentation afterwards, or they can take a handout away possibly. Karen says, I think bullets have their place at times, and Mazier says he prefers bullets at the conclusion slides. Sarah also thinks bullets are useful if you have specific words or theories. Yes, I definitely think there's a place for bullet points when you're delivering facts, and that's what words and theories are. They're words that you need people to take away. Claire says bullet points shouldn't be long sentences, but key points. Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the problem, that people who type their presentations right into PowerPoint type in the full talking point instead of just the summary, the fact that they're trying to convey. And some people prefer images. The audience may expect bullet points. That is a really good point. Some audiences And this may be something like computer science makes excessive use of bullet points, but that's very often because the slides themselves are the document that people are looking at. So sometimes the slide is the only document. There might not be a paper that's delivered. And if that's the case, if your slide presentation is the only document that's going to come out of it, then sometimes you might have to think about conveying more information on your slides. Ji Young says sometimes it's quite difficult to follow just a speech. And I think that you're right. A speech can be very difficult. So if your presentation style doesn't lend itself very much to a story, then you might have to think about the kinds of supportive points that are really going to help you. So it looks like people have really thought about their bullet points, and that's important. That's actually the important thing that I want you to take away. Not that I don't think bullet points should be used, but that you should be thinking about why you're using them. And if you're thinking about why you're using every bullet point that you use, then you're in a really good situation because you're actually thinking about conveying information to people instead of just filling up your slides with details. So great work. That was a wonderful discussion. All right. So we're going to move on to think about the kinds of tools and the kinds of things we need to consider when we're designing our presentations. The first tool that I would really stress is thinking about mind mapping. And what a mind map is a tool, it's a critical thinking tool where you're really trying to visually relate ideas. And so you start a mind map by writing your central subject on the center of a page, and then you have branching topics that come out of them, and then subpoints that come off of each of those topics. So you really get to see how different ideas relate to one another. And since you're mapping out your entire presentation on a single sheet of paper, you may actually start to realize that some information that you would have put later might belong earlier. So I can really stress the importance of mind mapping because it will allow you to really design more effective talking points throughout your presentation. Presenter tools are incredibly important in this day and age. And I will stress a few software ones. I mean, most of you are probably familiar with Microsoft PowerPoint. In fact, what you're watching right now is a Microsoft PowerPoint. Some of you who are using Apple computers may be more familiar with Keynote, which is essentially the same thing as Microsoft PowerPoint with a few different bells and whistles. And some of you may be using free online software like Google Docs, which has a presenter software that can actually act PowerPoint as well. And I'll put a link up there. If you've never used Google Docs, it's a very handy thing, and it's built right into your Gmail account as well, if you have a Gmail account. Another more innovative way of presenting, because all of those three software approaches, PowerPoint, Keynote, and Google Docs, they really focus on delivering information as a slide. And they can be really effective when you want to focus on individual images or deliver a very information-based presentation. But there may be a circumstance where you're giving a very visual presentation, and if that's it, you may want to use a tool like Prezi. Prezi is it's what's called freemium. I'm going to write that word out. It means that there's a free model and a paid one as well. And it basically conceives of your presentation as a giant canvas, and you actually navigate to different points on that canvas. And it's really great showing how words and ideas relate, or you can zoom in on an image to reveal a detail. And Prezi can be a very challenging piece of software to use, and I highly recommend that you use mind mapping if you're going to use Prezi. But it's a great tool for people who like to deliver stories in their presentations. And so it's something that you need to do just delivering facts and individual images, because in that case, just use a slide presentation. But if you're trying to show relations between ideas, then Prezi may actually be an innovative piece of software that you may want to make use of. And there are other online software tools that you may be familiar with as well. You also need to consider your location when you're giving a presentation. A lot of people fail to take into consideration the importance of scouting out your room because it actually makes a big difference. You may have a digital projector. You may not have a digital projector, in which case you need to bring your own and make sure that it connects well with your computer. You may have a wireless microphone, or the room may be too small for a wireless microphone. You may need to actually speak. Uh, Being able to walk around the room can be important to some people because it really allows them to break free and to associate better with the audience. So can you walk around the room? Can you split your audience into different groups? That's another important thing that you may want to consider. If you have a lot of group work, is that room going to allow you to do it? The room that's in this location probably wouldn't let you do group work, but it could be really effective if you were using surveys or polls, particularly if you're using clicker devices, which are very common in a lot of science classrooms now. So think about your location when you're trying to design your presentation, because the location will affect the choices and decisions you can make in your presentation. You also need to think about engaging with your audience, because there are different ways that you can engage. You can engage by having regular discussion points in your presentation, which is what I've done today. You can engage with your audience by having them fill out surveys or polls, whether the internet or a clicker device or any other tool that you can think of. You can try to engage with your audience by having them work in groups and circulating amongst them, and maybe having them report back. And all of these different ways of engaging with your audience, one of the things I need to stress the most is that they take extra time, and you may actually have to cut content out of your presentation. That's not a bad thing, because people will take more away if they've actually stopped and done some sort of action during a presentation. So think about different ways that you can engage your audience. Instead of just lecturing at them, think about how you're presenting the information and how they're going to absorb it. I really have to stress that the last slide of your presentation is not the end of your presentation. So this slide is a lie. In fact, it's not even the last slide of my presentation, but a lot of people will just end on a slide, and they don't have any means of taking questions or of letting the audience communicate with them. And what you have to think of is the end of your presentation, an opportunity for you to invite your audience to discuss things more with you. So you can receive questions, you can be prepared to receive tips and comments from your audience. One of the biggest things I would stress is having a piece of paper and not addressing every comment that comes from the audience as a question. Sometimes the audience is just trying to give you information that they have or relate to you by giving extra information. So sometimes the most effective way to address a comment after a presentation is just by listening and acknowledging it. And if you can learn to do that, then you'll really manage to engage your audience better. And always leave a way for your audience to contact you. So that could be giving an email or giving a website or having some way that they can talk to you just by perhaps mingling with the audience afterwards even. All right, so this is your final opportunity to leave comments, and I really wanted to open up the table. What tips or tricks you learned from presentations that you or your colleagues have given? What potential problems have you encountered that I might not have addressed today? So this is sort of a free-for-all part of the presentation, just to get a couple ideas. Do you have tips? Any secret things that you like to do in a presentation that you found really effective? Nervousness. I once just blanked out. Nervousness, practice, especially timing if you have a time limit. Yeah, and what I really stress with people who get nervous is practice, exactly what Sarah said. And particularly if you're giving a presentation that's on a deadline, try writing out. And my rule of thumb is about 3 minutes per single double-spaced page. That's the thing to give. And people who get really nervous in presentations, I think what they really need to do is they need to know that they're going to get nervous and to have really organized notes that tie into their presentation. And having really effective visual aids will really help you. And try practicing more. Practice with a mirror, practice in the shower, practice on your roommates. If you've never given your presentation live, there are lots of things like places where you could trip up that you may have caught if you had spoken your presentation out loud. I actually do this when I'm writing. I read my entire paper out loud because I catch a lot of grammatical and syntactical errors. It's the same way in giving a presentation. If you've never given it before, you don't know what might catch you out. Reza says, as I said previously, they're very good comments, but not all the time applicable to scientific presentations while you have to present a research work. Yeah, well, I think that actually these skills, in my opinion, they are applicable. I think with a lot of scientific presentations, people try and present too many facts on an individual slide, and that you could still benefit from treating your data in a visual manner by chunking out your outcomes. And by chunking, I mean splitting up your outcomes from your scientific exploration, experiment, what have you, into more individual slides. And I have heard scientific presentations where there is a real narrative to them. And what they really benefit from doing is by not overwhelming the audience with too many facts. So you really have to think about what's the most important thing that you can convey to your audience, because you can't always convey everything. But that's my particular advice. And as I said at the beginning, there is no single way of giving a presentation, and you really have to find your own particular style that complements your own research set and your own presentation needs and what your audience needs as well. So that's a long answer, Reza, to say that that you're completely right. That everyone has their own way of doing things. Krasman says, don't speak as if you've memorized your presentation. Yes, that's another very important thing. Some people over-rehearse their presentations, and all I can say is that if you are going to write a presentation, make sure that you write it out in a verbal way, not something that isn't meant to be spoken. And the only way you can do that is by actually practicing speaking your presentation out loud. Ruhola says, I have a problem where I go to the next slide and I forget to connect the information between the two. And what I would say is to try and stress the design of your presentation. So think about what you're going to say before you even design the slides, and I think you may find that might help your presentation. All right, there have been so many good comments today. I'm afraid that we're almost out of time, so I need to keep moving. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a link to the Learning Commons website where you can find more information on giving presentation skills. And so you can find a presentation toolkit on the Learning Commons website. I'd also like it if you could take the time to fill out a short survey. These online workshop series are a very new initiative, and we're trying to get as much feedback from you as possible so that we can give more effective presentations and change things that may not have satisfied your needs. So if you could take just 2 minutes to fill out that survey, you'd really help us a lot. And I just want to thank you all for participating today. You've been a wonderful audience. You've had wonderful ideas, and I can only hope that I've broadened your appreciation of presentation skills. Make sure that you all just continue to think about your own skills and needs. And I think that as long as you're thinking about it, that's the most important thing. So